What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Decker's Unicorn. My name's Martin.
And my name's Shonagh. Now, last week in the US, it was Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Whilst we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK,
No.
Martin and I do have one very special Thanksgiving tradition.
Yes, we certainly do.
And that is every year at around about this time, we watch the great classic Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
Yes. And I think it takes on even more poignancy this year simply because we're normally on lots of planes, trains and automobiles on our Tycho travels. But never mind. Next year will be a different story, hopefully. So, Planes, Trains and Automobiles. It's the perfect Thanksgiving movie. I'm sure everybody's seen this by now.
If you've not seen it, we're going to spoil so much in this review. So either go and watch it or be prepared.
Be prepared to cry. And laugh. Though.
Yep.
Yeah.
During holiday travel, some people get delirious. Some get delayed.
So the film was released in 1987 and was directed by the very prolific John Hughes, a director, writer, producer who's known for so many films from the 80s that we all know and love. You know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 16 Candles, Weird Science, National Lampoon's Vacation, Home Alone.
Pretty in Pink.
Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful... Oh.
Weird Science.
Yes, said Weird Science.
Oh, sorry.
But it's so good we said it twice. But yeah, he's just so prolific during the 80s and as a writer, director, producer, as I say. On this one, I think he was doing all of the above.
I think so, yep.
So he did all of them. And he wrote very quickly. And he had the first draft within a week, and I think he had 60 pages within 3 hours, was it?
Yeah, crazy fast.
And the first draft was done in 3 days, and then, you know, rewrites up until the point of shooting.
Yeah, and I think he said in an interview that he likes to kind of test out an idea by writing a script really quickly, and then he'll do something like 20 to 30 redrafts until the film's made, which seems like a lot.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of writing, and it's no surprise really that the guy died quite young. I mean, that's quite a stressful life. You know, I mean, there was probably a lot of caffeine, a lot of cigarettes, maybe even a lot of sort of uppers and downers to keep him going. Not saying he was a junkie or anything. It's quite a stressful life, and it just seemed like he was constantly either in front of a typewriter or behind the camera or, you know, all the things that go along with producing films as well. Yeah. And I think he had a lot to do with the casting, you know, going out and finding the right actors for the films as well, because he's very particular about the people in the script. So, yeah, the guy had a hell of a busy life.
Yep, so he left this world at the age of 59, which is
such a shame.
So young, but he's left behind a really wonderful and rich film legacy that we still love today.
I mean, that 80s library alone could, you know, you could watch those films for the rest of time. I mean, they've all got really universal themes, you know, a lot of teen angst in there. But this film was his first kind of adult themed, so not a scuddy,
like a nudie film.
not a nudie. But yeah, it was adult simply because of the language, wasn't it? So there's that famous moment where Steve Martin has the 18 F-bombs. So that's why it got its R rating. But the story is about Neil Page, who is a kind of middle management type.
Yeah, he's
executive.
Does he work in like advertising?
Yeah, it looks like he works in advertising. And again, it's a common theme in a lot of John Hughes movies. You know, like Clark W. Griswold is also like a kind of...
Oh, he develops
cereal varnish
on cereals to stop them going soggy and melt.
Yes. But it's all these middle management types, you know, guys with the kind of really stressful jobs. They're not at the top of the tree, you know, but they're not at the bottom of the rung either. They're quite well off. You know, they've got really nice families.
They all live in the same house in Chicago.
They all live in those lovely suburbs. But yeah, very typical in that respect as far as Steve Martin's character is concerned. And he's trying to get home for Thanksgiving, and obviously there's lots of problems with the transport. So starting from the very first taxi he tries to get, where he actually races Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so yeah, he gets his cab nicked by John Candy and Del Griffith, as he's known in the film.
Shower curtain ring salesman extraordinaire.
And from then on, there's loads of shenanigans involving travel. You know, they have problems on the train, they have problem on the plane, they get snowed in, and they end up in Wichita instead of going to Chicago, and various problems along the way.
So his flight that should have got him home that evening ends up taking him like 4 days or something to get home.
Takes about 4 days.
And a massive detour.
And I think that actually happened in real life to John Hughes, didn't it? It was some kind of problem where he was trying to get home to Chicago, and it took him about 5 days because of various problems. But it was obviously a real life story, so he clearly had a lot to say about it. And I think the original script, or the original film that they shot, was 4 hours long, which is absolutely bananas considering it's only an hour and a half movie.
Especially because it's a comedy. Like, they're normally like a lot shorter.
I mean, I don't know who would have watched a 4-hour comedy.
I mean, now I totally would, like in lockdown where...
Well, I mean, it's the kind of thing that would probably work on Netflix or something, you know, like a 4-part
serialised
comedy movie. Or maybe like a different mode of transport in each of the episodes. But yeah, a 4-hour comedy movie with this subject matter, I don't know if that would have worked anyway. But clearly, the core of the story was only an hour and a half worth, which is why it was all cut out. There was a few things that we'll get to later on. It sounded like they were really interesting sort of story points.
You've been under my skin since New York, starting with ripping off my cab.
God, you're a tight ass.
How'd you like a mouthful of teeth?
Oh, and hostile, too. Nice personality combination. Hostile and intolerant. That's borderline criminal.
So the film is perfectly cast. As I said earlier, John Hughes was quite particular about the people that he put in the central roles in his films. So John Candy and Steve Martin were just perfect. They were exactly what he wanted.
And the chemistry between them is wonderful.
It really is. I mean, Steve Martin's one of these actors who, he's in a lot of comedies, but he tends to be like a serious man that funny things happen to.
Yeah.
You know, but John Candy's more of a kind of taking the piss out of himself, you know what I mean? It's like self-denigrating kind of thing. Obviously, his weight and everything sort of plays into that. You know, he becomes an easy target for others and himself. So yeah, they were a perfect sort of little and large duo type thing, you know, straight man, funny man kind of thing. And yeah, just a perfect blend.
And those kind of personalities really played into the characters. So the characters they were playing were almost like caricatures of themselves.
Yeah.
Where Neil Page was probably took himself a little bit too seriously.
He did. It was perfect in that respect, yeah.
And John Candy was quite a sort of lovable, jovial chap.
Yeah, but again, he's always sort of calling himself out.
Exactly.
You know, that kind of thing, and doesn't take himself too seriously. But yeah, like we always say, the best roles are usually the ones that have a lot of the actor in them.
Yeah, and I mean, most of the film is just the two of them playing off each other. Yeah,
it was kind of like a two-hander, you know, like a stage show, you know, where you basically only have two people and they carry the entire show. And that was pretty much it. You know, everybody else is kind of peripheral, really. Yeah. It's just, they are very central. And I don't think there's a frame of the film, pretty much,
that they're not in.
It's not one of them.
Yeah. I think in the original 4-hour cut, or the 2-hour director cut, which was then chopped down to the hour and a half, there were some more characters, and some of the characters took on a little bit of a larger role, but it certainly doesn't feel like you've lost anything.
I think it's only the moments where it flashes back to Neil's wife occasionally, where they're not actually in the scene. So, I mean, that only makes up a few minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And again, that's a subplot we'll get to later regarding her.
So instead of Thanksgiving with his family, he's spending 3 days with the turkey.
So what is it you love about Planes, Trains and Automobiles?
What is it I don't love about Planes, Trains and Automobiles? Yes. It is just one of these films that makes you feel, well, first of all, it makes you feel like, oh, and then it makes you feel all like snuggly and warm. And like, I mean, I've never watched this film without crying. Maybe when I was a wee child and I didn't have emotions like I do now. But as an adult, certainly I've never been able to get through this without shedding one or two tears. It's
a very heartwarming movie. I mean, a lot of people sort of think of it as a Christmas movie. It does have that feel, that kind of timeless feel of a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of the sort of core ideas in it, you know, about coming together and family, importance of family and all that kind of thing, and bringing people in from the cold, so to speak. It is just such an amazing movie in that respect, and it only gets better with age. It really does. Like, every time we watch it, you get new nuances that pop out at you, I think. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the actual characters themselves. So
I was on my way home to spend a nice holiday with my family. Instead, I'm in a motel bed with a stranger.
First person we're going to talk about is Neil Page, Steve Martin.
I thought you were going to say Steel Neil.
Steel Neil.
And I actually, you know, he's got that glorious...
He certainly has.
Silver hair, the original Silver Fox.
He is the Silver Fox before Clooney did it. Yeah. So yeah, Neil Page, played by Steve Martin. He's got a fabulous character arc in this. I mean, a lot of the people in John Hughes movies, at least the central characters, tend to be these kind of conservative, middle management, upper middle class. You know, maybe take themselves a bit too seriously. There's all those kind of factors are all there.
Try a bit too hard.
They try a bit too hard. They're not very loose. You know, they're not very friendly either. You know, they've always got a bad word to say about people. Yeah,
I feel like someone was really mean to John Hughes in his childhood. And he's
But yeah, Neil Page is a little bit too uptight. He takes himself far too seriously. And he's one of those people that if someone's jovial and happy around him, you can tell he's just like, oh God, this guy, you know.
Yeah, he's like a bit annoyed by their happiness.
Exactly. And I think it's because he's a wee bit repressed himself.
Yep.
You know, like he's scared to let go, let loose. simply because because he looks stupid or he looks silly or says the wrong thing. And there's a few moments in the film, for example, on the bus where he starts singing he thinks it's brilliant. He's like, everyone's going to join in.
2 coins in a fountain.
3 coins. You gave
5 coins in a fountain.
You gave him a coin short.
Sorry.
But yeah, he does that. He thinks it's going to be amazing, and everyone's like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Flintstones. Meet the Flintstones.
Yes, Big John sets him straight. Big Dell. But yeah, he's got a fabulous character arc in the respect that over the course of the film, you see how he softens.
Yeah.
And he starts to see this person coming out. You know, it's not just the public persona, you know, all the things, the tics, all the wee sort of flaws and foibles that he's got, that everyone has. You know, he just sees everything as a bit more disgusting and everything at first. You can see that he genuinely comes to love this guy.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's got real affection for him, and obviously with the revelation at the end that Dell's wife's actually been dead for, was it 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
And he's just been travelling around with that trunk.
Oh, my heart's breaking all over again.
We actually watched a reaction video where somebody said that they thought the trunk had Dell's dead wife. She was absolutely adamant that Dell's dead wife was in this trunk, and she was like, something's wrong with this guy. We're going to get this.
He'd like murdered her. It's a really good reaction video, though. You guys should check it out.
That was quite funny. So it just turns out he's been wandering around, and I think there's lots of great moments in this where Steve Martin his character shows growth. You know, there's the point in the hotel room where they have the argument. It just kind of goes too far. As Dell Griffith points out, he's not a very tolerant person, and he isn't.
Not.
And the truth hurts, and you can see that he goes on the offensive. That really stung for him, and he really tears into him.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's really bad.
It's a horrid scene.
I love his reaction after it. You can see that as he's saying it, he's gradually feeling the kind of, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going.
Like he's
it's dawning on him.
Lit the match and it's too late.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then he has that moment right at the end where, you know, Dell says his piece. You know, I like me, my wife likes me, my customers like me, all that stuff. And
he's the real deal.
He's the real deal. You can see that Neil sort of realises he's done wrong.
But he's also, at that point, not the type of person to admit that necessarily.
No, he's not. I think it kind of goes unsaid that there's no sorry.
Yeah, not at
So
all.
I think he feels bad, not enough to actually apologise, you know, which would have been the perfect thing to do at that point.
I think Neil's definitely the type of person who brings his own problems into a situation, like brings his own stresses and takes it out on those around him at the start of the film.
Well, again, that's about inflated self-worth, self-importance, you know, and again, that's the kind of character he is. He's very self-important, even for the very beginning at the board meeting.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's constantly on his watch going, you know, it's
I've got
time
a
to
flight.
go. I've got a flight to catch. And it's understandable, but it's kind of the way he does it. You know, like, he's always annoyed. It's always about, I've got stuff to do. I need to do this thing. It's about me. It's about me. And I think, again, over the course of the film, it's about other people. He starts to see other people, you know, and like when he helps him along with the trunk. Oh. He's dragging the trunk along and he goes over and helps him out. That's when you start to see the growth of the character. It's like, this guy needs a help. You know, I might not like him, might not get on, but, you know, he's a person, he's struggling, and I'm going to help him out. And you can see that that's something he would never have done previously. And the funny thing is, right at the start of the movie, he expects other people to help him.
That's right.
The guy that steals his the guy that has the cab, and he offers him the money for it, you know. But that guy's not willing to do him a favour. So that was him looking in a mirror. At that point, this is what it's like to talk to somebody like you.
You know, I never even thought of that.
But that's quite.
How do you like them apples on your page?
Well, that's what it's like. I think that's why that was there.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's a kind of mirror image of him. But yeah, his character does grow really well in the film.
And some get Dell Griffith.
American Light and Fixture, Director of Sales, Shower Curtain Ring Division.
And then the other major character is obviously played by John Candy, and that is
Dale.
Big Dale. Or just Dale, we've just called him Big Dale. That's not
Dale
his name.
boy.
Dale Griffith, who is a travelling shower curtain salesman. No, shower curtain ring salesman.
Shower curtain ring salesman.
Just the rings, not the curtains. I mean, it's a very specific job, and one that's definitely been obliterated by Amazon and online sales, I'd imagine.
Yeah, you can't imagine somebody doing that kind of thing anymore, can you? That's the kind of person that used to come to your door.
Do you remember people used to come round your door? Or if you're in the hairdressers, people would come in selling things like, oh, do you want to buy this?
Entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur spirit's kind of, it's all online now, isn't it? Though people like make online shops. And,
even Avon is online.
But
so your dad can sell Avon from the comfort of his home.
Certainly can.
That's a joke for the Glaswegians. If you're not from Glasgow, you don't get that one.
Dell is big, lovable, happy-go-lucky, always got a good word to say for everyone. Everyone knows him. He's always got a joke.
He's just such a wee jovial character. He's the kind of person that all through the film, you think always lands on his feet in situations. He's quite loud, he's quite talkative, but it's kind of because he loves people, he loves being around people, he loves connecting with people.
Yeah, and again, towards the end of the movie, that's when that starts to have more importance, because he's lost someone very dear to him, so I think he values these little interactions. You have to watch this film multiple times to get those nuances. Obviously, towards the end of the film, the first time you watch it, that becomes a little bit of a like a twist, like a shock. Like, oh my God, his wife's been dead for so long. You kind of suspect, but it's the time. And then you think about, oh my God, this guy's just been wandering around.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
He doesn't have a home. He's just been like living in motels and he's got nothing. He's not
just
settled.
ran away from the pain.
Like you say, I think it's more likely, knowing his character, that he was surrounded too much by her death and he just had to get out of there.
Rewatching the film, once you know that, you do see so much more sort of nuances in how he plays the character.
Yeah. In the film, you've got a couple of little flashbacks where, Neil plays it back in his head and it's like, as soon as he finds out,
That
he
makes
realises
sense.
this makes sense.
I haven't been home in years.
But again, even the scenes that are not flashed back, there'll be certain ways he says things and does things, and you actually see the strength of John Candy's acting at that point as well. He's playing it really, really well because he's got this secret, that has to come through in the character. When you have to be able to look back and say, I can see how he was hiding it. And that's really well acted. It's very, very subtle, just in the way he says things.
Just in the way his eyes, like I'll never forget the scene where they're finally having a wee drink together and they're buddies, and Steve Martin says like, here's to the wives or something like that. Yeah. And you see there's a smile, but you see the almost panic and like dread in his eyes, and it's so heartbreaking. So it's it's really well acted, and I think it's the first time that I'd seen the kind of breadth of John Candy's acting ability.
His character, as far as an arc is concerned, doesn't really have, because he basically stays the same person. Yeah. It's really just about Steve Martin's character's acceptance of him, Neil's acceptance of Dell. It's more Neil that grows. It's actually a really good arc as far as, how he holds that secret inside and then reveals it at the end, and it's like how he's lugged about this pain. And it's almost like the trunk is like a metaphor for the sort of the pain and the suffering, and he's got it all with him and he's carrying it around.
And then at the end, Steve Martin helps him carry it.
He lightens the load. Like there's a couple of times in the film where he picks it up and helps him, but that scene at the end sort of brings it all home.
We can't talk about that for too long, I'm going to cry.
It literally brings it all home. He is he's lightened his load. He's taken that off his shoulders a little bit, that weight off his shoulders by giving him something to a home and something to look forward to, like a loving environment surrounded by that kind of warmth that he craves as a character. So,
and the other thing about the character of Dale is that I don't recall him saying anything negative about anyone or having any kind of interactions where he's mean to anyone or impatient or belittling or anything like that. So, he's...
I actually seen a comment recently from a friend on Twitter, and it said that when you're nice to people, it takes people off guard. People don't know how to deal with it because they're expecting the catch. They're like, what's going on here? What do you want? People are quite like suspicious of people who are naturally just like really warm and kind, and how can I help? Do you want to talk? Let's just have let's have a conversation. How's things?
Oh, that's sad, isn't it?
But it is. That's kind of where the world has got to, where people now, someone sits down and starts doing that, you're like, who's this weirdo? Are you conning me? Like you're going to try and steal my phone, or you're trying to get my bank details or something.
Get
like
away
that.
from me with your COVID.
And it's true. It's very true. And his character's like a throwback to that time when people were like that.
Two happy clams just whistling down the road.
There is a little appearance from comedy great Michael McKean.
There certainly is.
He is...
David St. Hubbins.
I was going to say he's one of my favourites.
He's a patron saint of quality football.
Can't dust for vomit.
Yeah. Oh God, we need to do Spinal Tap.
Smell the glove has arrived.
Smell the glove has arrived. We need to do Spinal Tap.
Oh man, it's a classic. But then that's another film we love. But anyway, so it's a really short scene where they get pulled over by this trooper.
Police officer,
Yep. At this point, the car has been on fire. Yep. I think, and he's questioning the roadworthiness of the burnt out vehicle. And John Candy's like explaining that actually the radio works, but none of the speed gauges do. And he does a great job of it. But in an interview as well, he explained that scene was supposed to be a lot longer. Yeah. And he was supposed to bring going with the exposition that they'd actually overshot Chicago by 100 miles.
Right. That seems a bit weird to me, though, that they would miss Chicago by 100 miles.
It's quite a lot, but I guess they didn't have Google Maps.
Well, this is true.
I mean, I've gone past the exit for work.
You'd think they would see one of the signs.
Well...
But they did miss a sign earlier in the film, but John Candy was too busy playing the piano on the dashboard.
Yeah, and getting caught in his jacket.
Or whatever,
So yeah, anything's possible. But also in that scene, they were eventually arrested. Obviously, this isn't in the final cut, but they were arrested, and then Steve Martin gets strip searched.
Yes.
John Candy gets away with it because obviously always falls on his feet in this one.
Yeah.
But then when Dale reveals to him that he didn't get insurance on the hire car that he paid for on his card, Neil punches him. And that's why there's a couple of scenes where it looks like Dale's got a little bit of a black eye.
That's right. It's when they pick up, is it the truck? It's kind of like the second to last.
It's really near the end.
Conveyance.
Yeah, why is it not called Planes, Trains, Automobiles and
a truck?
In Arctics?
Yeah, he's got a black eye in that section. And yeah, I always wondered why he had it. So yeah, that makes sense that he gets punched at some point.
So there you go.
Possibly the flow of the film is moving towards them being more friendly.
Yeah.
Like it's moving in that direction, and that kind of conflict right towards the end might have spoiled it a little bit.
Yeah, maybe too. I mean, I feel like being strip searched might have sent me over the edge. So maybe it was been a step too far.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the 2-hour cut though. We'll never know.
Never know. Yeah, there's a sequence as well where I think they have their wallet stolen during the night. Someone's wearing a hat.
It's a person. Of human nature.
A human. And earlier on, they deliver pizza. Mm-hmm. So I distinctly remember seeing that. I was watching that when I was really young. I think it was about early 90s. It was on Sky Movies or Sky Premiere. And I remember the person who delivers the pizza. She sees the money in the wallet and they think, I'm coming back later and I'm going to get that. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. You know, because you actually see the person's face.
Yeah, when they're doing the robbery.
Exactly. So there's no reason to see that person's face unless it's kind of like a wink to, remember that person from earlier. You know, because other than that, it's just a faceless robber. It could just have been someone in the dark, you know, fumbling around, grab the wallet and bugger off. You know, same job done. But they actually look over and you see their face quite clearly. So
there's a couple of other parts in that kind of timeline that are referenced later on in the film, like when Steve Martin's trying to get to sleep and it becomes clear that his bed is also covered in beer.
Yeah, that's right. He says.
And he mentions it's because Dale left them on the on the vibrating bed. Yes. So that was another scene that was cut out, but you don't really notice it. Like when they refer back to it, it's not. You don't feel like, oh, that's a scene I missed. Like it just feels like they're.
And what is it about
something.
Vibrating beds? Like
I know.
National Lampoon's Vacation as well. Everybody seems to be in a room with vibrating beds.
John Hughes got some sort of weird obsession with vibrating. Maybe this was supposed to be an adult film.
I think that's the thing. I think he's trying to make it look seedy.
Yeah.
And I think that gives it an even seedier edge, that even the bed is a vibrating bed.
Seen, in my 35 years on this earth, I have never seen a vibrating bed.
Well,
I mean, I'm happy to leave this earth still having not seen a vibrating bed, but
just need to live in John Hughes' universe.
In Chicago.
Yeah, exactly.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the Marconi family.
So another scene that's quite heavily cut is when Neil and Dale find themselves seated together on the airplane at the start. Yeah. So the first time when they're really together, originally that opened with quite a long section of dialogue from John Candy. That kind of sets the scene. I think it's kind of like a rambling, you know, he's nervous, he likes chatting to people.
Yeah.
We'll realise later that he probably doesn't get to talk to a lot of people.
It's that Pulp Fiction thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's uncomfortable, a wee bit uncomfortable, so he's filling the space. He can't sit in silence.
And he wants to make a friend.
He does.
But that scene gets cut quite heavily, so it's just him sort of starting out by saying, oh, so what do you do for a living? And then it cuts to Neil being like, actually don't want to talk. Yeah. So he comes across as seeming a lot harsher in the cut that we see.
Yeah, I think that's better though, because it establishes early on that his character is kind of just...
the mean one.
He's mean and he's had enough already.
Yeah.
It's like, I've only spoken to this guy for 5 minutes, but I'm over it, you know. Yeah. And that plays to his character perfectly, I think. Because again, the softening of his character towards the end then, you know, plays better because he's been shown as being really mean, and especially that sequence that we talked about in the hotel room where he goes off on him.
Oh, it breaks your heart. Oh.
It certainly does.
I have to keep remembering they're going to be friends in the end. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
The other sequence that has been cut is the one with Neil's wife.
I guess it's like a whole subplot, isn't it?
It's a whole subplot, and I could really have done with that one, to be honest. The reason behind that is that his wife has got these really weird sequences where she looks like this princess in a tower almost.
Just kind of like dreamily
really aloof.
looking into the
But she's always got this kind of weird look on her face, like she's confused. You don't know whether she's angry, sad, upset, or whatever.
Just needs a big poo.
Yeah. And I think because Neil's late, you'd probably be a bit more kind of like okay with it because he's phoned and he said, I'm late, I'm going to be late, I've been held up. And you think she'd be maybe be a little bit upset, but okay with it. But she's always got this kind of like confused look, like she's halfway between emotions. And the fact is that she thought he was having an affair.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And so that would be why she has that face.
Yeah.
And it actually works so much better. So it's a kind of disservice to her, this cut.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
It makes it look like an odd person.
Yeah, like she's reacting weird to things.
Exactly, like it's no context. But with that in mind, it plays so much better because she's really worried about the relationship. She's worried about him. It's kind of halfway between worried about him being trapped and not coming home, and then there's the suspicion that he might be having an affair. So
with Dale.
So there's two sort of really difficult emotions in there, like worry for him or is he having an affair? So, and also that sequence right at the very end when Dale comes home, she finally sees he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Griffith.
Which makes sense because if you don't know that, the way that that's acted seems really like over the top. Yeah,
the delivery's really poor because of that, because it just seems like out of left field that she's standing at the top of the stairs just going, hello, Mr. Griffith.
And she's so emotional about meeting him.
Exactly. So it's kind of weird. But when you know that she was thinking he was having an affair, that makes far more sense.
Definitely.
So even just a 5 minute, not even 5 minutes, just a couple of scenes, even on the phone where they discuss that, and they have that, it doesn't need to be any further than that. Because Steve Martin, Neil, is not going to tell Dale that anyway.
Yeah, because so they're not private.
Exactly. They're not going to have that discussion about what's just been happening in his private life. So it's not going to add to any dialogue there.
So there was also a lot cut out after the point where Neil realises that Dale's not actually got anywhere to go, and he runs back to the train station to find him just sitting there, and the heart breaks thinking about his wee face looking up and his wee boots, his wee snow boots. But apparently there was a scene where they go to a coffee shop and they discuss it. I've seen some still shots from this. It looks quite emotional, but it was also in black and white, so everything looks emotional in black and white.
Yes.
But yeah, he goes into detail about how, now try not to cry when I tell you this, Martin, how his wife had died and he found it too painful being at home, so he just packed up all his stuff.
Oh, that's what I said earlier.
Sorry, I should have told you that. Saving it. And just has been on the road ever since. And how they would never manage to have a family, and how he quite often, especially around the holidays, latches on to people. And right, are you ready for the most heartbreaking quote of your life?
Yeah.
But this time, I couldn't let go.
Oh.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the sound of Martin's heart breaking? So
correct.
Apparently, though, that line was ad-libbed by John Candy.
Oh. Such a legend.
He is.
And another sequence that Steve Martin's involved in is the moment on the train where he's being pensive. He's thinking back to everything that's happened and he's got that kind of smile on his face. And also that's when he starts to realise about maybe Dale.
I haven't been home in years.
So he starts to put two and two together. That was actually just Steve Martin on downtime, apparently.
Yeah.
So they said they just kept the cameras rolling and he was just thinking about something and they caught him. And it's a really natural reaction.
Yes.
So it would make sense. If I was Steve Martin, I would have wanted them to keep that a secret.
I know, like that was my great
that was just amazing acting.
Like maybe he was practicing his acting.
Well, possibly. But yeah, that's amazing that it was just cameras rolling on the break, on the downtime.
Interesting fact for you.
Yep.
So the guy who Steve Martin's character races for a taxi at the start is obviously Kevin Bacon,
yes.
Who's obviously only 7 degrees of separation from all of us at any time.
Yes.
Kevin Bacon is in another John Hughes film.
She's having a baby.
Yep.
Now,
the film that Neil's wife is watching in the background when she's like thinking about Neil having an affair, the film that's on in the background is She's Having a Baby.
Dun, dun.
Which wasn't actually released till the next year.
Yeah, so that was another John Hughes film. And obviously, he'd given Neil's wife a pirated copy beforehand.
He probably got it from a salesman when he was in the hairdressers. They came in with a bag of stuff. Do you want to buy a VHS?
She's Having a Baby, Kevin Bacon, brilliant.
I've not seen it.
5 stars.
Really?
Not really, no.
Sounds a bit rubbish. When I looked up Kevin Bacon just before this, it wasn't like one of the immediate pictures of things, which makes me think it wasn't his finest work.
No, it sounds like one of those Hallmark movies. Like,
oh, have you not seen it
She
either?
said no, or
Yeah.
he
I'll
had
be home
to
for
do it.
Christmas. Part 3.
Ever been to Hawaii?
Yeah.
You see Don Ho while you were there?
See the second show, that's the best one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The film's very much John Hughes as far as the style's concerned as well, and it's very, very person focused. There's nothing in the film that is flashy. There's no flashy camera moves. There's not really any special effects. What you do get is a lot of those kind of musically led montages that he's really famous for, like the chase sequence, for example. Like Ferris Bueller and all these things, National
Classic
Lampoons,
80s, isn't it?
Home Alone. There's always this kind of like a chase montage of some description, whether it's someone chasing someone or someone trying to beat somebody somewhere.
Someone running for a flight through an airport, which, by the way, is how I feel about every single flight I ever catch. Every plane, train, automobile we ever catch, even though it's not what it's like, I feel like that stress of running through the airport in Home Alone, that is transport for me.
Caravan! So yeah, typical Hughes, bittersweet ending, but heartwarming, and all those characters that you grow to love. I think it's like a crescendo. Every one of his films have got this kind of happiness crescendo.
Yeah.
Where it's like you get to know them, you love them, you hate them, you really sort of become invested in the characters, and then by the end, it's just, there's usually like a reveal like, oh, they did love each other, or, oh, there's usually a bittersweet end to it. Like...
Oh, you got your check for the Jello of the Month Club.
Yeah, so happiness tinged with a little bit of sadness, but the sadness has kind of like been buffed around the edges a little bit, so it's not as harsh anymore.
Or it's used to kind of amplify the happiness and show up like, oh, but look how lucky you are because you've got all this.
That's probably more accurate. Very, very typical white upper middle class Americans a lot of the time, and very conservative white folks usually. And again, that house that we talked about, the Home Alone house, where they shot it, and is it outskirts of Chicago?
I think so. So obviously when I grew up, I thought everyone in America lived in the house like that.
Well, I mean, some of my favourite films like Ferris Bueller and Weird Science and things like that, they all just lived in these massive houses.
They lived with massive houses, and everyone has a phone in their bedroom.
Yep, and they had sleepovers.
Yep.
And house parties.
And everyone had like cans of soda pop in their fridge, and pizzas got delivered all the time.
And the kitchens were like bigger than my house.
Yep.
As it's a John Hughes, very typical John Hughes film, there's very typical themes as well.
Yep.
And he usually does something along the lines of don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know about this person, you're just judging them on either how they look or how they interact in the first instance. These films are littered with that, right from the very beginning and all the way through.
Breakfast Club. Classic.
16 Candles, Pretty in Pink.
Oh yeah, actually, everything.
Basically, yeah, you name it. There's also an idea here about not knowing what someone else is going through. Be careful, be tolerant with people, because you don't know what issues they have in their life, And if you're overly quick with them, nasty to them, snippy, that can easily make someone turn because they've got a lot of difficult stuff in their mind. So then they can, amplifies it. And as we said at the start, that's kind of how Neil Page grows.
Yeah, definitely.
I think at first it's all about him, and he's not very tolerant, and he just takes out his rage on other people, and he doesn't really care what their life is, what they've got to do. It's all about him. He's on a schedule. I need to be moving. And Del is very much off schedule. So he's got a lot of time for everybody.
Yeah. So is this film like The Breakfast Club condensed into like two people?
Quite possibly. Because it's the same writer, you're going to get the same personalities coming out. So a lot of the time you'll have films where the personalities are separate. So you've got very distinct personalities in, single people.
The geek, the jock.
Yeah, there's
the
all
princess.
that. But then in some films you'll have a combination thereof, where it'll be different characters all brought together in one person.
Character. Yeah. The film is hugely entertaining. It's very, very funny.
Yeah, it's a very funny movie. And again, it's another good balance of sort of funny and drama, funny and kind of tragedy, tinged with tragedy in this one. But again, it's mostly a comedy.
Yep.
Like, it's like 99% a comedy. It's just, I think as you said, it's just the tragedy of Del's story at the end that just amplifies
it's like putting salt in chocolate. It brings that flavour out.
It just brings out that kind of happiness factor. The feel-good factor is just completely amplified. So if you've had a good time watching it and laughed and you've grown to love the characters, then that crescendo, happiness crescendo that you get is just, it's just amazing. And it never fails to hit hard.
See that Bears game last week? Yeah, hell of a game.
So, Martin, what is your most memorable moment in Planes, Trains and Automobiles?
Well, I'm going to say the trunk. as in when they're carrying the trunk up the street.
Oh.
You know, right at the very end.
Yeah.
It's just that moment where Neil has lightened Del's load. He's helping him with it. And I think that's the very first time in the film, I think, where they're actually walking side by side carrying it. Mm-hmm. Previously, it's always been usually Del dragging it. Mm-hmm. So someone's always in front or behind. You know, so there's a kind of distance between the two people. And they've got the same distance here, but they're on a kind of even plane.
Yeah.
They're actually walking side by side. And it's like, you know, they're finally on the same level with each other. And I think that's really important. There's the music as well, really lifts it. And again, because it is that happiness crescendo, I just said, it's like that's the point where it just hits its peak. And it's a brilliantly framed shot as well, as they walk up that really empty street with all those amazing houses.
There's no cars.
I would love to live in that neighbourhood.
I wouldn't like to shovel all that snow.
Oh yeah, that'd be a hell of a job. Oh, there's probably like an old guy shoveling snow that's like...
who puts bodies in the trash can. The
does,
salt
he
turns
does.
the bodies to mummies.
The John Hughes universe. And probably Ferris lives a couple of doors over.
I think so.
And Gary and Wyatt live like across the street. So what's your most memorable moment?
Well, I've spoken a couple of times about some of the wee looks that you notice in John Candy when you see the film again. Probably when I think of Planes, Trains and Automobiles, the scene that first springs to mind is when Steve Martin comes out of the shower. The bathroom's like disgusting and there's water everywhere, and John Candy's managed to use every towel, and there's just this tiny little face cloth, and he like tries to dry himself with the face cloth.
It's the putting it behind the back thing.
It's that bit when he tries to do it. It's so ridiculous. And then the bit when he's like, he picks up something to wipe his face, and it's actually John Candy's pants.
That's the next day. That's
the next
morning.
day, but in my head, like, because they both scenes take place in the bathroom, so my scene is general bathroom.
General bathroom with Steve Martin.
General bathroom, reporting for duty.
But that's a great scene. We just,
Oh, and actually, if I'm allowed one more, maybe it's a quote.
Yeah.
Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
Okay, what's your favourite quote then?
Those aren't pillows.
Yes.
So it's the bit when they wake up all snuggled up together.
See the Bears game Saturday?
Yeah, go local sports. And he realises that he's got his hand
wedged between his buttocks.
Yeah, I think so. That's certainly implied.
That's the implication, yes. So my favourite quote is actually, well, it's kind of a tirade. It's when, when Neil goes to the car rental place and he just drops the 18 F-bombs. I just see that all as one quote.
Yeah.
It's like one big massive sentence.
It's a monologue.
It's a monologue, an F-bomb monologue. So yeah, I think that's my favourite quote. It's just, and actually the lady that's opposite him is just like acting it so well. You can see at first she's kind of like taken aback, and then she's gradually just getting more and more annoyed and like, when's this guy going to finish? You know.
She's really good.
She's brilliant.
Eddie McClurg.
That's
Eddie
right,
McClurg.
Yeah. Eddie McClurg, yeah.
So it was her idea actually to be talking on the phone.
Yeah.
When he comes
Gobble,
over.
gobble.
And like, so she ad-libbed all that and like made all that up, and it's really funny and she does such a good job of it.
Yeah.
But also I have definitely been the person in the queue at an airline where someone's been on the phone instead of, and
any
it is
shop
the
or whatever.
most frustrating thing ever.
Yeah, it really is.
But also, air people too. They've got their own problems too. They've got their own stuff going on.
But also, it is your job. You know, it really shouldn't be personal calls.
Absolutely.
I don't think.
But no one at their work deserves to have 18 F-bombs dropped on them. Maybe 17. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, you're right. I talk too much. I also listen too much. I could be a cold-hearted cynic like you. But I don't like to hurt people's feelings. Well, you think what you want about me. I'm not changing. I like me. My wife likes me. My customers like me. Because I'm the real article. What you see is what you get.
So, best performance in Planes, Trains and Automobiles. I think it's a shoe-in.
I think it is a big shoe-in.
It's a massive shoe-in.
I think it has to be John Candy.
Yeah, John Candy for me as well. He's so good in this.
I love John Candy, and I'm so sad that he passed away at 43.
Oh my god.
So young.
That's extremely
so young.
Yeah. He's only just kind of hitting his peak as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could probably say that late 80s was his peak, and, he was in other films after that. I can remember Canadian Bacon, for example, and some other things, but nothing as memorable as the stuff he did in the late 70s, early 80s.
Kenosha Kickers.
Kenosha Kickers. Oh, well, that's the 90s, but again, it was like a bit part. you know?
Yeah,
Like Uncle Buck came after this, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And that's maybe one of his best roles as well. But I genuinely think this is John Candy's best movie.
I think so.
And again, it's only because of watching the film again and you begin to appreciate the multiple things that's going on in his character and how he's actually balancing them. For somebody who's known as a primarily comedic actor, he had some really great acting chops. The scene where Neil goes off on him in the room, we've talked about that before, but his response to that, he's got tears in his eyes, he's frustrated, you know.
He's hurt.
He's actually, he's so hurt, he's down on himself as well, but he feels like he has to defend himself, and he doesn't go overboard. You know, he doesn't turn it back on him too much. Yeah, he is. He's got a lot of dignity.
That's a very good point. He doesn't. He's not mean back to him.
He could quite easily have just said, "You're this, you're that, you're a stuck-up asshole," blah blah. And he says a few things,
but he pretty much just says that he's intolerant, which isn't a dick. It's just
that's
the truth.
Exactly, that's more of a kind of like, this is something you could change about your character. You know, it's not just a random swear. He's not just calling him out when he quite easily could have. And he's a big guy as well. He could probably have flattened him. But he's very reserved. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant scene. It's really, really well acted. And I don't think there's anything else he did that sort of came close to that level. But he was consistently good. I think John Candy was bad in anything.
No.
He might have been in a few bad movies, but I don't think he was ever bad in anything he was in. You know, like Ox, you know, for example, in Stripes, he's brilliant. You know, he's even got a wee part in that. Even his wee turn in National Lampoon's Vacation's brilliant as the kind of security guard at the end.
Oh, that's right. I
Gets the BB
forgot
gun
about
shot.
that.
That was one of our strict. He's telling Roy
Legend.
Wall.
Taken too soon.
But yeah, he was a really good actor.
Yeah,
and I think
he was.
I would love to have seen John Candy do something subversive. This is the kind of thing that an actor of his type usually does, where they're like primarily comedic or primarily known for something like kid movies or whatever, and then in later life they get offered something from a director that sees something in them, like, you've got this really sort of nice personable quality, it'd be great if we twisted it.
Like 1 hour photo.
Aye, exactly, like Robin Williams. That's why that was so powerful for Robin Williams,
keeps
was because it
me
was
out
like,
so
oh my God, this guy's so different. And I think somebody like John Candy would have been amazing as, you know, I don't want to sound terrible, but someone like a serial killer, you know, that lures people
We had the
in.
trunk already. So.
Yes, exactly. You know, but he lures somebody in with that kind of charm and then and kills them and stuff. I think he would have been really good at that.
The Ted Bundy of the polka scene.
Yeah. But as you said, that's a good point. You know, like 1 hour photo, something along those lines. I think he would have been great, and we never really got to see that.
But some really fabulous performances and some real joy in all of our childhoods.
Well, that's the thing. He brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, and he'll always be remembered that way. He'll always just be remembered with that smile on his face. And it's that closing scene, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, where he's just standing there holding his cap, you know, holding onto both hands, and he's got that kind of bittersweet face again, that idea that he's happy, but he's also thinking about what he's lost, and it's a great balance of those emotions in his face. That's his way of expressing it. He's got to show you through his face that those things are happening, and he does it really well. Those kind of scenes are a real test of an actor when you're
mixed emotions,
kind of like almost ambivalent. It's like there's these two things, and you're not like stronger for one or the other kind of thing. It's like,
good job, John Candy.
Good job, John.
So, now that the cockles of our hearts have been sufficiently warmed by this John Hughes Thanksgiving masterpiece, we are all set for Christmas films.
Yes, we certainly are. We're going to be trying to watch one Christmas film every day up to the big day.
So it's like Advent films.
Advent films,
in the
yes.
Shonagh and Martin household.
Yes. So, we're going to try and condense some of those films into the next few podcasts, so we'll just have to keep you updated on that.
So if you don't like Christmas films, what's wrong with you?
Just need to tune out for the next few weeks, because it's going to be Christmas madness.
But we do have some rather unconventional Christmas films in there.
Yeah, there's a few alternate Christmases.
So stay tuned if you want to hear what those are.
But thank you once again for listening to this podcast. Your support is hugely appreciated as always. Don't forget you can find us on Twitter. Just search for @DeckardUnicorn, and we're also on Facebook @DeckardUnicorn too. This podcast you can hear on Anchor FM. If you're already listening to it, you've probably found that. But yeah, you can also hear it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all that good stuff.
So until next time, we're off to Deckard our halls.
You can't say that. That's rubbish.